All right. So I hope you guys have given a thought that why this is not working. So let me explain. JavaScript engine. Okay. So by default, browser, whatever browser you are using, like Chrome or Firefox, Internet Explorer, each browser have a JavaScript engine inbuilt in it. So when you develop any application development, when you develop any website, you write all the JavaScript code, and when you render the JavaScript code on browser have already an runtime environment to support your JavaScript code. Okay, that holds one engine, JavaScript engine, right? And it supports your code and make your website work on the browser. Okay, so similarly, this is client side environment. Okay, let's call it as a client side. That means where clients can view the browser. Front end, in other words, I would keep it as a front end. So I don't know what kind of terminology you use in your project. Now similarly, there is something called node. This is also JavaScript engine. So this is mainly for the backend environment. It's like backend code. Okay, so this also does same like browser. This also supports all JavaScript code, because node also provides one engine, JavaScript environment, where all your code can be executed on the node engine. So mostly this is for backend applications, or I would say backend environment. Now browser is providing JavaScript engine to support JavaScript code, and the backend node is another engine just like Java, also supporting JavaScript code. So what does Cypress do is Cypress role play in the browser, not on the node level. Why? So if you have gone through my initial lectures on Cypress architecture, that Cypress executes all your code on browser. So it takes all your JavaScript code and executes them on the browser directly, unlike other tools like Selenium. So when you execute your code directly on browser JavaScript engine will parse that code and resolve everything what you are asking for. So Cypress interacts on browser level. So this is a JavaScript engine, this is JavaScript engine, but this node is very, very powerful than browser JavaScript engine. So that means this also supports extra JavaScript features which browser does not support, like accessing file system. Now I told you right now, to access files in JavaScript we use module called fs, that is supported by node backend engine. Okay, that kind of module browser is not supporting. Of course, right? Why do browser worry about files in your local system? Browser is on internet level. So these guys are not supporting anything which is in your local files or database. Browser even doesn't care about database. It's all on the front end, right? Database files, how to access database files in your system, any backend systems. If you want to access them, yes, there are JavaScript modules which can does that. Now, for example, this is fs module is a module where you can read the files in the backend system. But these are supported by only node JavaScript engine, not browser JavaScript engine. So as Cypress executes all your code on browser, so when browser encounters this files fs module, then browser just said, hey, what is this? I don't know what it is, and it just gave an error saying it's not a function, because browser have no clue about accessing files and databases. Now that is the problem. But Cypress only executes your code on the browser. So initially this was a major drawback for Cypress. Then later what these guys does is, okay, so if you have any files or database access where browser does not support, then Cypress told go and create it as a task. That means write all your files codes or database code as a task. Okay, Cypress supports a new feature called task, which should be written in its config.js file. Okay, so all the tasks will be defined in this cypress.config.js file. So if you write your code, that means if you wrap this code in config.js file as a task, okay, wrap that in the task and give the task a name. Now let's say whole code, these 3 lines of code, I'll wrap in a task, and let's say I will give that task name as Excel to JSON, something. I'll name it like this. Okay. And now go back to your actual test and use the task like this, cy.task, execute this task name. Okay. You don't write actual code here. Instead, you write that code in the config.js file, and for that code, give one name as a task, and cy.task, that name you use in your actual test. Now what Cypress does is, in the process of execution, the moment it sees cy.task in its code, it will assume that, okay, this guy defined as a task. That means this is not something browser gonna support. Now I have to switch back to the node engine to run this code. So what it does is, it stops executing on browser, and that particular task piece of code, whatever it is there, it will come out of browser context and executes that on your node engine. So that code will work, and it switch back to the browser after the task is complete. So that is how Cypress switches back to node engine and browser engine. But Cypress will get that knowledge that I have to switch only when you define that piece of code as a task. If you write as a normal code like this, blindly it executes on browser, where you will encounter issues like this, that read file is not possible. Okay. Now our goal is to make sure that this is written as a task so that node engine supports. All right. Now just see Cypress tasks in Google. Now go and read the definition in their official website. Execute code in node. Simple, right? If you don't listen this explanation, and if somebody asks you to go through this page, you will definitely confuse. What is this? Execute code in node. What is this? But now you know what is executing code in node, what is executing in browser, how those engines work, how those are separated. Now you have clear idea, right? So one simple definition. If you want to execute in a node, use task. This is the syntax. Now don't worry about all this now, because I'll live explain here how the task work. All right. Good. Now let's go back to config.js file, because that is the place where you will write your task. If you carefully observe, previously in the last section, we have deal with the database, how to read the content from database. That is also something which browser does not support. So that's why we ended up creating one task. Though we copy pasted from their documentation, at that time I did not stress much on what these tasks are. But you see, somehow we already written it, but we just followed the documentation and pushed the code here. You might not be very clear at that point, and now you might be recollecting, okay, now that makes sense. Setup node events is something, right? This is the actual first starting point. So we have written function for it in the previous lecture for database setup. So here where we have defined tasks, so all the plugins are loaded. So similarly, I'll define one more task. To define any task, this is the way on. When you write like this, that means you are telling that I am creating one new task. Simple. Now all the tasks, if it's having multiple lines of code, curly braces, right? I mean, all that task should be written inside a block like this. Okay. So first thing is, you need to give a task a name. So let's say Excel to JSON. That is our task name. Okay. So this is our task, and we are wrapping it in the curly braces. So obviously, when you want to convert, you have to give the file path, right? If you give which file you want to convert, if you give that path, and then it does the work, right? Inside this, go and paste this code. So once you have file path, simple. This is the 2 lines of code, I think. It's very straightforward. Copy this code, cut it from here. We no more require that, and place it here. Okay. So basically inside this Excel to JSON, let me give another name because both matches, so it may create ambiguity. Converter. This is our task. So again, Excel to JSON. So you need to import those 2 things here. Cut it here. We don't need here. Oh, we already have. I just copy pasted. Cool. So paste those two requires and you are writing that piece of code here happily. And finally, once you get the result, what you need to do, you just need to return that result, right? So that result come back, that JavaScript object what you are writing, that will come back in your actual test, and you can print or do any parsing. So great, you have successfully created one task. Same code, instead of writing an actual file, we are writing in the config.js file in the setup node events function. Awesome. So this is your task name now. Copy this, save your complete project. Now come back to your let me stop this, task validations. So you have your file path, right? Now cy, now to call the task here, how you will do it, you need to tell like this, cy.task. Okay, this expects two arguments. First argument is the task name. Okay, that this is the task name, simple. And second argument is the argument what you are passing into the task name. This one, file path, is the argument that should go as a second argument. So first argument task name, and second one is the arguments you are passing. So file path is the argument you need to pass, because here where you will give the entire information where that file is there, and this guy will go and pick it up. So if you call it like this, then it will go and execute that task. Now ultimately this task is finally returning what? A JavaScript object, right? It converts from Excel to JavaScript object, and then it gives you back like this, right? So you need to catch it. So dot then, again it's an asynchronous mode, so you need to have a promise to handle this. So all the text whatever you are getting, the result, you can pass it into variable, and here where you can start looking into that, cy.log.result. Okay, so whatever JavaScript object it written, I'm just catching it, and I'm doing cy.log, so that in Cypress log you will see that a complete JavaScript object. So that's the plan. All right, so looks okay. We did a lot of things, but we still never run our test. So just to recap, script will be pretty straightforward until here. So once it clicks an Excel button, it downloads and we have a path. And then we are saying Cypress to use node because there is a file system access. So that's why we are written a task. That task I put on task, and then I defined everything here. So make sure you write it inside this function only, guys. See, there is already one task. You can have multiple tasks like this. Simply put on task, write your own task, and go and declare there. So you are getting the object back. So now to call the task, this is the way, cy.task, task name, and the argument what you passed, and that resolves promise. You get back that result and you are logging it. Let's see how that goes. I'm also curious. Whenever you make any changes to this configuration file, which is cypress.config.js, make sure you restart your test runner. So sometimes it might not reflect. So completely kill your runner, open it freshly again, because it might not take changes to your latest configuration. So I opened the runner freshly. And now we need to, what is our test name here? Excel task validations. All right, so test is in, at least now we didn't get that FS error, hopefully. Let's see how that goes. So it is using again token to login by skipping that UI form, which is great. So it logs in, add a country name, place order. Okay, perfect. You see downloaded Excel file, which is great. And then awesome. You see the last step here. It converted the task. And finally, what we are saying here, cy.log result. So that JavaScript object is logged here. Okay. So if you want to see what that is, select that, right click and go to inspect. And here you go. The object is yielded, and when you open, you have all the details again, invoice number, everything. Now let's say you want to grab the invoice number. It should be easy now, right? So how do you grab it? So this is the result is the JavaScript object, result dot data. Okay, start from here. So this result dot data, and this data array have two arguments, array 0, array 1. So if you want invoice number, that is in the first array, right? So 0 of, so you have to tell data go data of 1. So that way this will come to the second array. If you do data of 0, that will go inside this result, which is what you took, result dot data dot 1. And here, once you reach here, let's say you want to retrieve this order ID. So that means A. So result 1 dot A. That's it. And then now if you log this, you will exactly see the order ID in the output. So similarly, we can also put assertion. So just like how we have put for CSV files that verify that product name is correct. So expect we have a product name, right? So here on the first index product name, whatever we are using, that to be equals to, so this product name we have to get it from our Excel file. So how to get product name? So here we printed the order invoice ID. Now we are putting assertion for product name. What we initially used to add the cart, that should match with the one what we have in the Excel file. Okay, so where is our Cypress? Now this is the product name, Adidas original. That means 1.b, that's all. 1.a is giving invoice number, 1.b will give you the product name. All right, so same thing to equals, but 1.b. Cool. So let's see how this goes. I'll save everything. What is that? So this was the classic example to understand how to read CSV files and how to read Excel files. All right, it just downloaded the file. Log, you see everything is good. It exactly printed the order ID. See here, whatever the order ID you see here, that is coming from Excel. That matches with the order ID what you have in your page. Where is that? You see? And Adidas original is what you added initially, and the same thing it's pulled from the Excel, everything is matched. So that's how you can make Excel validations using Cypress. But again, be cautious guys. I know many of you try out this and fail and bang your heads with that fs.read file is not a function. So to understand why it is not working, you need to understand the concept which I explained here and why tasks are important in Cypress. Right? And this is one of the famous interview question guys, when you are applying for a good senior automation positions, like what are tasks in Cypress? Why are we using tasks? Why not writing that in your actual code? So you should explain all this to them and how Cypress architecture work, how the browser and node engines work, and then explain that this is the workaround Cypress provided in as a tasks to execute file systems or database. All right. Thank you.